Hi, here is Sergey from the European Resilience Initiative Center, and we are trying to understand what is going on in Russia with the alleged Prigozhin coup. I hope you can hear me good, and I will try now. It's my first live, so I will try now to to post it. How does it work? I think it is here. Great. So I will now post it on Twitter and we will go live and we'll discuss it. Okay, we don't have like yet any participants, so I can, yes, we have the first participant here. Welcome, and yes, you may ask any questions you have. And we're trying now to understand what is going on, what we know, what we don't know, what can be the situation on the ground. And let me first summarize what is what we have seen until now. First, several hours ago, Yevgeny Prigozhin, who is founder and financing person behind the Wagner private military company. He's not like the military leader, or was not for a longer time a military leader of Wagner. The military leader was Dmitry Utkin, who was actually the real founder, and Prigozhin was only a person who financed it from his capital. But he published like some weird statements, which were a culmination of his conflict between Wagner Group and the Ministry of Defense, Minister Shoigu. And he accused Shoigu and the top military leadership of Russia of deliberately killing the Wagnerites in like some strikes of the Russian army against the Wagner units. That was a culmination of the accusations by Prigozhin, and we know that before, like 1 day ago, Prigozhin recorded a very strange video, like sitting in front of the Wagner banner, and saying that actually all the Russian official propaganda against the all Russian official propaganda, which was used to explain why Russia attacked Ukraine on 24th of February last year, it was all lie. Prigozhin said literally that there was no killing of civilians in Donbass, what was the Russians' claim, that there was like no plans of Ukraine to attack Russia, which also was the Russian claim, and that actually the real motive behind attacking of Ukraine by Russia was the idea to install a marionette president, Medvedchuk, a Ukrainian politician of KGB heritage, and to take control over all the economy of Ukraine and to split it between the Russian oligarchs. He also, Prigozhin, said that Donbass, the occupied territories of Donbass, were robbed by the Russian authorities, by the FSB people who were robbing Donbass for years, all these 8 years long, of the Russian control over Donbass, and that only that robbery and plundering and economic motives were the reason why Russia controlled Donbass and why Russia attacked Ukraine. So that was a very clear statement by him, and there was like a very interesting part in that statement. He actually said that Minister Shoigu, the Russian Minister of Defense Shoigu, was a person who influenced Putin to attack Ukraine in full-scale invasion. So in that like constellation, which Prigozhin demonstrated to the public, there was like some sort of like not that guilty but weak Vladimir Putin, who was influenced by clearly bad Minister Shoigu, and a lot of innocent, brave Russian soldiers who were sent by Shoigu, by greedy, stupid Shoigu, into a meat grinder of Donbass. And Prigozhin was practically a guy who is like a real real leader from the people, for the people, who is fighting together with his soldiers, and he stays like in front of the soldiers, protecting them from greedy Moscow sitting Shoigu. So that was the situation on, let me say, the midday of today. And what we have seen after that, we have seen that Prigozhin posted some really weird statements accusing Russian army under control of Shoigu of killing Wagnerites. And he said literally that the Wagnerites are now going to punish there who killed the Wagnerites and thousands of other people, which was clearly the top military leadership of Russia. He said it, like he didn't name Shoigu or Moscow directly, but he said top military leadership who started the war. And Prigozhin threatened to go and punish them, and he said no roadblocks will be tolerated. Everyone who will try to stop me or my people will be killed as enemies. And Prigozhin said he has like 25,000 people who will go to, like it was clear, go to Moscow and like to restore peace and order. And then he said we will return to the front line and we'll fight there. So that looked like pretty phony, because it was accompanied by a video which, from my perspective, looked like a staged fake video with really like bad acting and bad voices, as two soldiers, allegedly Wagnerites, are going through the forest and they are approaching what they say was their camp, military camp. What they say was shelled by the Russian army. And they demonstrated like some demolition in this camp, but the whole picture looked extremely strange. Like I'm not an artillery man, but everyone like has seen a lot of results of artillery fire during this war. It didn't look like there was an artillery fire. And the voices, I'm a mother tongue Russian speaking person, and the voices looked very staged, like as if they read the text, not as when they like speak clearly from their reaction. But that was presented as the evidence that the Russian army shelled the Wagnerites forest camp. So what happened after that? After that, like on that point, for me, it looked like, look, it's like too phony, it's too fake, it cannot be true. It is just the repetition of the normal Prigozhin threats against Shoigu and the normal like fight between like two military leaders. And Shoigu has all the official resource, like he may decide about ammunition, about army, about equipment, about anything. And Prigozhin actually, he doesn't have like anything to say. Like he gets what he gets, and if he doesn't get anything, he can like record an angry video. But then things happened which started to look really strange. Because first, we now have a lot of videos and photos from Rostov on Don. Like Rostov on Don is a Russian oblast, like regional center, pretty important, not far from Ukraine, like about 100 kilometers from the official, like sovereign Ukrainian border, and I would say like 200 kilometers from the front line. In the south, like the Don River goes to the Sea of Azov, and the Sea of Azov is that like little sea a bit to the northeast from the Black Sea. So you may imagine the location of Rostov and the streets of Rostov. And Rostov is an important hub for the Russian army and used to be a very important hub for the Russian army. All the war, like all the years of the war in Donbass, when the Russians like brought the equipment and army units and everything, they established there actually like a huge military commando and like a headquarter. Yes, and now like the streets are being patrolled by the Russian army. I see the questions here. I will try to read them and try to respond to them. The first one, okay. First was like comment. Thank you for the news. I'm happy to say what I know. Thank you for visiting this live. It's my first live. I'm sorry if I'm very clumsy and sound stupid. The second question is: do you believe that Prigozhin can somehow deal the damage to the Russian army? Well, I don't believe that Prigozhin units can really harm the full Russian army. First, because Prigozhin units, they totally depend on the equipment and ammunition. Like for months, the main accusation of Prigozhin towards Shoigu was that Shoigu doesn't supply or sabotages supply of the Wagner Group with ammunition, and that's why they cannot like effectively fight. Of course, Prigozhin. Okay, let us start from the very beginning. Prigozhin Group has never been an independent group. It was not a private military company. There is no private companies in Russia in oil industry, in IT industry, in automobile industry, the real private companies. And of course, there cannot be any private military company in a country like Russia. But it was like legally separated from the army and of course staying under effective command, effective control of the military commander. And they used military training grounds, they used military planes to be transported, they got military equipment. Of course, they didn't buy it somewhere, they got it from the army, and they were subordinated to GRU, Главное разведывательное управление, as it was to be called before, and then it was called GU, Главное управление Генерального штаба, the main directorate of the general staff, and they were under effective control of the Russian army. And during this war, during this full-scale invasion, the Wagner Group turned from a military-controlled heavy infantry, what they always used to be, into a military conglomerate of units with pretty different types of armament. They got their tanks, they got their artillery, tube artillery, and rocket artillery. They even got their air force. They got like the planes and helicopters, and they could recruit old pilots who were retired pilots and give them these helicopters and jets to fly them. That's why, for example, during this last summer, there were a lot of Russian retired pilots killed in Ukraine. They were not in the army officially, but they were in the Wagner Group. Of course, like you, as a private military company, you cannot operate helicopters, attack helicopters, or bomber jets because you buy them. Of course, you get them from the army. So this also means that if the army says we don't supply you anymore with fuel, with technicians, with ammunition, with rockets, with shells, with grenades, they don't have anything. So for Shoigu, it was very easy to drain the supply of Wagner Group. And here, I don't believe that's why that if it is only a fight between the army and the former army-controlled Wagner Group, which turned rogue, I don't believe that Wagner Group can cause any harm to the army. But I believe that what we see now with all these statements is only the surface. And here, like I want to stress, I speculate, and I wrote in my Twitter thread that good experts now should say, I don't know. And that is what I say, I don't know. Like, I can only say what we know as facts, and I cannot say anything as a conclusion, because there are a lot of things I don't know, a lot of important facts, and it would be stupid to come to some conclusion without knowing these facts. But if we can imagine that what we see, this conflict between Shoigu and Prigozhin during the last days, that it is only like a top of the iceberg, and there are underlying issues. We don't know who is staying behind Prigozhin. We don't know, are there like any army groups of influence staying behind them? Can he get like some supply without Shoigu? Or is he only like a camouflage for some real coup, which can happen, of course? This changed the situation. So in a plain situation, when we have one Prigozhin with his even 25,000 heavy infantry, but without supply, and the whole Russian army, and FSB and other military formations, I don't believe that Prigozhin can do anything. But if we can imagine that there is like somebody behind Prigozhin, and Prigozhin is only the official face of that development, of that movement, it totally changed the situation. So now thank you for all updates. You're welcome. Thank you for visiting this live. Can you share your thoughts on the whole thing being some kind of psyops or disinformation campaign? Yes. First, everything what Prigozhin did, it is of course psyops. Like in the broader sense that it is an attempt to influence the decision of your opponents or your allies with spreading some information, false or true, or like stressing some things or providing information in the right time. Of course, it is psyops. Is everything what we observe now with all the movements, is it only psyops, like trying to influence the development of the things by providing some kind of information? I don't believe so. Why? Because we observe too much of movement. We don't only have the statements by Prigozhin, his Telegram channels, or the Telegram appeals in all Wagnerite Telegram channels. They call the Russian troops to surrender. They clearly use the words cleansing crusade, and say they are now going into cleansing crusade, and they say that all the army personnel must either come to their side and join them, or they will be eliminated in that cleansing crusade. That's like too much of information, very strong information. We see direction from the Kremlin. We see that the FSB has opened a criminal investigation against Prigozhin because of alleged call for a military coup, which of course can be all the part of a staged event. But we see too much movement on the ground. We see helicopters and heavy equipment, military equipment, moving around the streets in Rostov on Don. We see roadblocks on the highway from Rostov to Moscow. You don't do it just for, look, in Russia, you have a totally controlled information space. And if you want to say that there is something serious is happening, you don't need to block the highway to Moscow. You just announce it. And it turns into like some sort of perceived reality by the people who get the information from the TV. And here they really block the road. Then we have like 1.5 hours ago at noon local time, and Minsk time. Minsk local time is Central European time plus 1 hour. The private jet of Alexander Lukashenko, the Belarusian dictator, and allegedly his family inside left allegedly to Moscow. Like, you don't, like, for a psyop operation, you don't call your buddy Alexander Lukashenko and tell him, hey, hi, Alexander, just get your like things packed and get your stuff packed, get your family, get your son Kolya, and fly to Moscow. You don't do it. Like, it's too much. And that is why, and you have like also the announcement of General Surovikin. General Surovikin, he was a commander of the Russian army in Syria, the butcher of Syria, and he was a commander of Russian army in Ukraine during the destruction of Mariupol and after, like a real butcher. He was like later, as he was not successful in conquering Ukraine, he was swapped by Gerasimov, but he's still a very high ranked and respected in the Russian army commander. And we have now his video message shot by a Russian state TV, Rossiya. And General Surovikin, I posted this video in my Twitter thread, in my last Twitter thread. You may watch it. He's sitting in his like field military uniform, looking totally stressed. Like he doesn't look drunk, although he speaks like a bit clumsy. But I think he normally speaks clumsy when he may not use swear words. And he's holding an assault gun in his hand, like putting it on his knee, and he addresses the Wagnerites and telling, "Look, we are the same blood, like we are brothers. Don't do this. We come back under the command of our President Vladimir Putin, etc." You don't have your military commander, who was a commanding officer of the whole Russian army in Ukraine. You don't have him on TV in field uniform with an assault gun, sitting like he's a general of Saddam Hussein in somewhere in a bunker, addressing a mutiny, alleged mutiny, and asking the soldiers not to join the mutiny if you don't have the mutiny, right? Because it's too much. It's just too much. If you stage a mutiny to that scale, you demonstrate your weakness. Like you may stage a mutiny, but in this case, a mutiny needs to be weak and needs to be like destroyed very quickly. Like they appeared, and in 6 hours they are all arrested. So here, I would say it's too much for me to be only a psyop. I don't know what is behind, and that is like important. I don't know. The next question is. I believe that a considerable number of Russian army troops may be in support of Prigozhin. Yes, well, can be. Like Prigozhin is actually a person like he's like Putin. Like it is not Putin who has created aggressive Russia. It is aggressive Russia who has found Vladimir Putin as its leader, and to a certain extent loves him until now. And Prigozhin is the same. Like Prigozhin is playing the same archetype of brutal, honest, blood from the blood, flesh from the flesh of the people. He knows how to address people. He's he's playing this Stalin type person. And yes, I think that many in the army are in the Russian army are in support of Prigozhin because like he has created like his image. Like he says, "I'm fighting with you. I'm not sitting in Moscow. I'm sharing your challenges. You are in Bakhmut. I am in Bakhmut. You are wearing uniform. I'm wearing uniform. I'm not some sort of like Moscow Kremlin receipts general who has his family somewhere in London or riding a yacht over Mediterranean Sea." Of course, like this is what like many soldiers and officers on the field like, and he's calling now the losses, like look, Vladimir Putin addressed like during the last week several times media and said like total bullshit. Like he said total delusion things, like hundreds of Western tanks destroyed, like some 200 Western tanks Leopards destroyed, 600 IFVs destroyed. The Ukrainian offensive is completely wiped out, etc. And it's not true. Like, of course, the Ukrainian army suffers certain losses, but it's not like hundreds of IFVs, right? And Prigozhin is calling a spade. Like he clearly says, yes, the Ukrainians are successful. Yes, the Ukrainian artillery is successful. Yes, the Ukrainian tanks are successful. Yes, we are suffering losses. Yes, we have problems. We don't have ammunition. We don't have enough artillery. we don't have enough drones, etc., etc. And that is what many soldiers who know the level of the losses, what they value, of course. I think he can be supported by many people. And don't forget that he uses a racist card against Shoigu. Like Shoigu is an ethnic Tuvinian. He's from Tuva region. Tuva or Tiva is a small region on the border to China. And actually, like, it's a very funny, like in a good sense, place, because they used to be an independent state until 1944. They are a member of anti-Hitler coalition. Of course, they were totally controlled by the Soviet Union until 1944, when they decided suddenly to join the Soviet Union as an oblast, as a region. But until 1944, they were independent. And Sergey Shoigu, he's from Tiva, and he's actually like his real surname should not be Shoigu. I'm sorry, like I love this story. That's why I will invest like a couple of minutes in it. His father's name was Kojuget Shoigu. Kojuget the first name and Shoigu the surname. But that was a consequence of a Russian imperialistic mistake, because in reality it was vice versa. Like, because in this Tuvinian nation, the place of the first name and surname are the different compared to the Russian language. But the Russian colonial Soviet bureaucrat didn't know that and didn't care about it. So he just like mixed the surname and the first name in the documents of father of Shoigu. That's why Shoigu turned from the name of the father of Shoigu into his surname, and his first name was in his papers Kojuget. So now Sergei Shoigu is Sergei Kojugetovich. Kojugetovich is patronymic. Sergei Kojugetovich Shoigu, while he actually should have been Sergei Shoigovich Kojuget. That's like just a small funny story about like how the Russians ignored the languages of the colonized nations. But now Prigozhin is using this racist card and saying that this stupid Tuvinian guy, this stupid and greedy Tuvinian guy, is killing the Russians. And that is also what resonates in the hearts and minds of many Russian officers, who were okay with Shoigu as long as he was victorious, but remember Shoigu his ethnic heritage as soon as he's not victorious anymore. The next question is, Prigozhin hopes that other structures in the army come to his side. I don't know, maybe. Like, actually, we don't know what is the moving factor behind Prigozhin, because like there can be like different things. The most like simple thing, he just wants to get like more power, and that is absolutely understandable. That is absolutely understandable. He wants to get more power, and he sees that within the structure of the Russian military hierarchy, he's not from the army. He's like a stepchild of the army. His unit will always get the worst ammunition, the worst equipment, everything the worst, and he wants to get more. Well, that is something what can explain his motives, but there can be also other reasons. We can imagine that he wants to be like a crown witness in the Hague trial. He clearly is guilty for a lot of war crimes, personal guilty. He clearly will get a life sentence if he got like trialed in the Hague. So his only way out is to be a crown witness and to buy. And actually, like, I think that the whole management of the Russian military machine and the whole top bureaucracy in Russia, they are currently thinking like, what are their exit strategy for the case when the war is lost? How can they save their assets? How they cannot be trialed in the Hague? And all the statements of Prigozhin, if we go one by one through his statements within like the last weeks, he clearly names the Russian war crimes very openly, and he criticizes Putin for these war crimes, or Shoigu. He says that the argumentation about the invasion was fake. He said that the Russians like killed people. He said that the Russians destroyed cities deliberately, and. This all looks like as if he prepares for him an exit strategy. Like another option can be, and I stress once again, it's just like not fantasy but speculation. Can he be bought? Like, he's a mercenary. He could be bought or influenced maybe by Ukrainian intelligence. Why not? Like, they could have promised him something for that mutiny. Why not? Or he can believe that he can like be a trigger for something and get promoted in new Russia after, for example, Putin gets removed, because Putin's position are clearly not as stable as they used to be. We don't know if there are groups who are organizing a coup or thinking about a coup in Moscow. We know that in the Nazi Germany in 1944, a group of officers organized a coup against Adolf Hitler, not because they were Democrats, but because Adolf Hitler was losing the war. And they didn't want Germany to lose a war, or at least they didn't want Germany to lose a war in a total destruction. They were ready to step out, to offer the Allies something, and sign like some separate peace, or to Soviets something and sign separate peace to win the East Front or to win the West Front, but to preserve some sort of great Germany. And they wanted to get rid of Hitler. So now we can imagine that in Russia, people are starting to think that Vladimir Putin is something which stays between ending this war with minimum possible losses, like getting something, but not getting the whole Russia destroyed and exhausted. So there are like a lot of motifs which can be in play. We don't know it. What we know, that what is happening now is different compared to all the open conflict between Prigozhin and Shoigu during the last months. And this conflict is not a new thing. Like, it is something what lasts like for months. Okay. My question is where to get popcorn. Okay, that is also my question. I have a call to tomorrow morning, and now I'm thinking like how much coffee I need to drink tomorrow morning to be fit for that call. But it is extremely interesting what is happening now, because like maybe it is after the Kharkiv offensive of the Ukrainian army, it is the most interesting thing which has happened like since months. And I don't want to sound like a person who watch this war as a Netflix movie. It is definitely not. And I'm constantly in contact with my friends there, with my dear friends, and I'm totally in what is going on in Ukraine. But we need something what can bring Ukraine a massive movement in front, and some internal Russian turbulences can be this thing. Okay. That is, I don't understand what is being meant, Sergey Lovetsina, Yeleni. I don't know. Like, if you could explain it, what do you mean? Like, Sergey, a hunter for deer. I don't know what do you mean. If you could like explain it, I would be thankful. Isn't it possible he knew was gonna get eliminated and decided he had nothing to lose? Well, it can be. That is actually an argument which I offered today. One of my friends who said that maybe just the Russian Ministry of Defense or Russian FSB is going to eliminate Prigozhin, and they have provoked him for such move. I did not believe that this could be a provocation to eliminate him, because the Russians are famous for having killed their field commanders without like any hesitance. Like, think about the elimination of the Russian leaders of the Donbas, so-called Donbas republics. They just moved to Moscow, got killed there. We know that there have been like several arrests in Luhansk and in Donetsk when people just disappeared. And Putin is famous for like reckless arrests of his ministers, and he doesn't do it often. But if he needs to arrest them, then defense minister gets arrested, economy minister gets arrested, an oligarch gets arrested or get hanged. And this is what happens in Russia. I don't think that the Russians needed to organize this theater to kill or to arrest Prigozhin, who clearly all the time visits front lines, so you can just like blow him up and say the Ukrainians did it or his own troops did it. There was no need to insulate it. But your question is, I think it's interesting if it is if what Prigozhin is doing, if it is something he does out of desperation. It can be. But still, even out of desperation, you don't have that much of movement achieved, because you need a preparation for that. And what we know from Telegram channels, that allegedly a lot of Wagner soldiers addressed his dear ones recently during the last days. And I read messages that their relatives, their wives, girlfriends, and mothers said that they called them and said goodbye. So there were a lot of people who knew that something will happen. And actually, you don't spread that much of information that something will happen if you are not sure that you will have a full support. And like it is not like a small desperate action of a small group of people. I don't think that it is. It's getting more interesting. It seems Russian TV has been hacked, and Prigozhin angry rant is on repeat. Well, it is well can be. Like the Ukrainians have hacked Russian TV, like not the Russian like global TV, but the local networks, because like in any like big nation, you spread the signal via satellite, and then it could get like spread through the local networks, and they can use their own advertise, etc. So the Ukrainians hacked Russian TV networks in Crimea, for example, and sent their messages of Zelensky and Ukrainian national anthem. So it is well can be. So what we see now, there have been allegedly armed special forces, police special forces, who visited Prigozhin's headquarters in Petersburg. This Wagner building, actually a palace, like glass and metal palace in the business center of Petersburg. And there have been searches there. The Russian media are currently saying that in Krasnodar region there is an alert for police, and yeah, in Krasnodar region there is like one of military training centers of Wagner. And allegedly, Russian riot police has surrounded this Molkino camp of Wagner, and the Wagnerites are holding defense there, but there is no reports on shooting or something. Actually, I don't believe that the Russian riot police can hold against Wagner. Just because the Russian riot police is very good against the civilians, but not against armed people. It's not that Wagner is that good. It's just that Russian riot police has absolutely zero experience in fighting armed opponents. The Russian independent media Vazhny Story reports that in Rostov on Don, police goes according to plan fortress. It is like a typical number of measures which police uses to not let anyone enter to police stations or exit of them, and like perceiving the territory outside of the police departments as a territory controlled by the enemy, and that it is not like something big like the Russian police goes according to fortress plan regularly during any like mass gathering of protesters in the streets, like can be Navalny fans, it can be other people who are clearly non-violent. They still act according to this fortress plan. And there are also reports that the police officers and FSB officers in Moscow got an order not to leave the city and stay in contact. I would also not say that it is something big. And yes, there is nothing new. I will try to open now the Russian. If I don't know if I can open it from Germany. No, I cannot. I wanted to. Yes, it's interesting. Like from Germany, you cannot open the website of the first Russian TV channel, but you can open the webpage of the second Russian TV channel, although they both belong to this state. So here on the Russian second state TV, it's actually the biggest Russian state TV. We have two news on the title page about Prigozhin mutiny, alleged mutiny. The first one is that they have opened a criminal investigation, and the second is that Putin has been informed about Prigozhin mutiny, but nothing more in details. What is more interesting is that what we see on Lenta.ru. Lenta.ru is also state-controlled, Kremlin-controlled online media, which has its audience like more young people or like more techno freaks, etc. So not the old babushkas, old grannies like who watch TV. And here you have every single news on the title page, like 20 news are only about this alleged mutiny. We see that the first TV channel in Russia has broadcasted breaking news about the alleged Wagner mutiny. This is not what normally Russian TV is doing. Actually, I don't remember when they have broadcasted breaking news last time. Maybe during the announcement of Vladimir Putin that he attacks Ukraine. And yes, there is another Russian general who also addressed the Wagnerites, and he also stands like in front of the white wall in his field uniform. It is the first deputy head of the General Chief of Staff, Alexeyev. He also addressed the Wagnerites and asked them to abandon their mutiny. I quote him: "This is a knife hit into the back of the country and the president. We don't need a civil war now," he said. So they openly use the word civil war in these generals' announcements. And actually, this is for me, this is the main argument that it is not just some sort of propaganda psyop, because you don't make psyop that big only if you want to organize something really huge and inside of your country. Do you have a link to Russian TV stream? Well, I can watch it. Sorry, it is my first. Oops, sorry. Like, start to get like some crazy weird SMS on my bracelet. It is my first live stream. I don't know if I can here like post like some links, but I think yes, we can do it. We can do it. YouTube has blocked the Russian media, I think, so we cannot find like any Russian TV channel streaming on YouTube. But I will try now to publish a link to like a web page of some Russian state TV, so we can observe them. Okay. It doesn't work in Germany. I think it doesn't work in the EU mostly. So if you're outside of the EU, you can have this link and try to watch it. Otherwise, like this is the second Russian TV channel, and this is this web page for like younger people. The last two web pages can be opened from the EU also. So you may try to watch like what can be opened from your computer, from your location. Okay, here Shoigu was never a military man, only a deer hunter, often mocked by the military men in Russia. Yes, you're right. Shoigu, that is a really fun story because like Shoigu has never served in the army. He's never been an officer, never attended any military school, and as far as I understand, he has even never been a conscript. Like he's a guy like who wears his military uniform and his huge stars of the marshal of the Russian army, but he has never served a day in the army. So the army knows that, of course. It was not a big deal as long the Russian army like was victorious and like could conquer the territories of the neighboring countries or kill civilians in Syria from the fighter jets or bomber jets. But of course, it's a big deal when the army loses the war. His surname means the one who removes skins from the. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. The site shows Belarus and Chechnya will be important to observe. Lukashenko is really on the way to Moscow. Maybe Belarusian police state will finally fall. Yes, that can be a case. That can be a case. Like I talked recently with a great expert on Belarus, Alex Kucharov, who is a London-based expert on Central and Eastern Europe. And he is from Belarus originally. He spent his childhood and teenage years in Belarus, and you can find this interview with Alex Kucharov on our YouTube channel, and I highly recommend you to watch it because Alex dives deep into details of how Belarusian economy works, how Lukashenko balanced between the West and Russia, how he tricked both Putin and the EU, and how he survived for 26 years. He's the longest serving dictator among all dictators who controlled like some countries on the territory of the former Soviet Union. And yes, like Lukashenko is totally dependent on Vladimir Putin and on Russia. And if Russia collapses, Lukashenko, of course, has no chance. And even if Russia gets weakened or loses the war, Lukashenko can be removed. And Lukashenko has a lot of blood on his hands. Like there are pretty clear evidences that Lukashenko ordered assassination of his political opponents in the later 90s, and of course he stays behind all the arrests and tortures and all the terror against the opposition during the last 2 years. So he has no chance. So for Lukashenko, the best way is, of course, to hide somewhere close to Putin or to escape completely. But I don't think that Lukashenko can escape completely. So I think he's tied to Moscow. Okay, how do Prigozhin delegitimizing Russia's entire justification for the invasion fit into this? Wouldn't they be unpopular with both Wagner and Putin supporters? Well, that's a good question. Like, if I understand you correctly, then you say that if Prigozhin says that all the argumentation against the invasion in Ukraine was false and was like a fake, then he actually alienates himself from all the people who supported invasion of Ukraine. This can be true, although we know that the Russians switch their beliefs very easily. Like like I lived in Russia for a longer time, and I worked there, and I had, like, during the last years, I had a lot of discussions with people from Russia. And even if you talk to very educated people who know foreign languages fluently, who work with foreign companies, they can defend in the same dispute absolutely contradicting positions. Like, I still remember in 2014, I had a discussion with my colleague from Moscow, and she said that there were no Russian troops in Crimea during the occupation. And I said, no, there were, of course, Russian troops. We have the photos, we have evidences. We know there were Russian troops there. And the same moment she said, of course they were there, and that is good, because if they were not there, then the Americans would have come. And she didn't see any contradiction while saying simultaneously that there has not been any Russian troops in Crimea, but it's good that the Russian troops have been there, because otherwise the Americans would have come. So here I believe that as soon as Prigozhin could offer the Russians a new holistic picture of why Russia is glorious, this new picture will be accepted. Exactly as the Russians believed, like in 1990s, that the Americans are good and they're friends, and then, like, during like a couple of months during the Yugoslavia wars, they started to believe that the U.S. is bad, and that's how they unite in one head the idea that Ukrainians are a brother nation, but everyone who calls himself or herself Ukrainian must be killed. Like, it is pretty easy. It is that double thing which George Orwell pictured in his 1984 book. So I think that Prigozhin could sell a pretty good picture to them, like heroic Russian army, great Russian men, bad Nazi Ukrainians who, like, killed a lot of Russians with the help of the NATO, and because Shoigu was greedy and has stolen a lot of money. Actually, from this perspective, he tries to play the same anti-corruption narrative, which has been used, like, by, for example, by Navalny's team, because, like, he's addressing the same issue. He's saying that the Russian army could be effective if not the corruption, and Navalny says that the Russian soldiers die because of the corruption. And here it is interesting that in the last Navalny call, or it was a call of Volkov of his, like, top 8, they announced a new, like, propaganda offensive against Putin's regime, and saying that they will spread the truth about the war, they will spread the truth about the losses, etc. And there was, like, a line when they said, and it is even what Prigozhin says, because, like, Prigozhin clearly names the losses of the Russian army. So even Navalny supporters use argumentation of Prigozhin to, like, to bring enough solid fundament under their criticism towards Vladimir Putin. So here we cannot be just, like, straightforward and saying, okay, if you say that the invasion of Ukraine was based on a lie, then you, at the same moment, like, you alienate yourself from the whole Russian population. No, there are a lot of nuances, and I think that Prigozhin, who is clearly a populist, he can find these nuances and formulate them well. What do you think Prigozhin intends to do with Ukraine? Well, I don't know, but what we saw from Prigozhin's statements, he had like really contradicting statements. Like he said he would like capture Bakhmut and Solidar. He obviously like captured Solidar. He didn't capture Bakhmut. But then he said like that he will be the next president of Ukraine. Like there is a video of Prigozhin staying in his like helmet and personal armor with an assault gun on the top floor of a destroyed house. I think it was in somewhere close to Bakhmut, and ruins are everywhere. And Prigozhin is saying, "Look, uh, this is like the ruins of Ukraine, and we are fighting. But I will come to Kiev, and I will be the next president of Ukraine." Does it mean that he wants to be a president of Ukraine? I think, of course, not. I think he's just playing with the with very volatile and very emotional feelings of the crowd. Like he throws these emotional ideas into the crowd and tries to find out what ideas get the most response. And here he plays with this Russian dichotomy. On one hand, the Russians want to destroy Ukraine. On another hand, they want to acquire Ukraine. On one hand, they want that Ukrainians welcome them with flowers. On another hand, they want to rape, torture, and execute Ukrainians. And they want these things simultaneously. Actually, like that is an action of psychotic types of people, like of psychopaths, like maniacs, etc. You may not like analyze their action based on the action of normal people. And here, I think that for Prigozhin, Ukraine is not that important. Of course, he's looking for money, he's looking for power. If he can use Ukraine to get to money and power by destroying Ukraine, he will destroy Ukraine, or try to destroy Ukraine. If he can get to money and power by conquering Ukraine, he will try to conquer Ukraine. Good for Ukraine is that he doesn't have power for that. Like for Ukrainians now, of course, the best scenario would be that Prigozhin really starts to fight the Russian army, and that the Russians will be will deal with each other and not with the Ukrainian offensive. As the Ukrainians joke now in this football match, I wish victory for both teams. Both recorded video of the same wall, and the weapon looks like Ministry of the Interior Service weapon. I cannot judge the. I think you are talking about the videos of generals, this Alexeyev and Surovikin. I cannot judge the type of the weapons because I think that if you mean that they have this my English is poor. This back part of the gun which you use to hold against your shoulder, that you can like close it. It is actually a standard weapon, which also pretty often being used in the army. Like I remember from my military education, not military service, but military education at the Moscow Lomonosov University. We went to Tamanskaya division for the standard like gun shooting, like live shooting exercise, and we got the assault guns, which were exactly the same, like with this back port which could be closed. It was nothing to deal with the terror minister. I'm not sure. And the walls, for me, the walls they look similar, but it's like standard walls of an office building. I'm not sure it is the same building, but it can be, of course. Oh, your live stream is amazing. Thank you so much. I'm trying to do my best, but I think it's still poor. Thank you. It's really very nice to listen that. Here, I'm sorry, I just joined. Can you please summarize in quick, if possible? Well, I can summarize. Can you like if several people would like to hear what was told like during like the first 20 minutes, 30 minutes? I can shortly summarize it. If you just like publish in comments something like plus or yes, I can see like how many people are interested in that. Otherwise, we can go further to like reading through the Russian media or Ukrainian media and trying to look what is going on. Okay, so I will now. I think. Yeah, like what we see now in the media, that the media report, like Russian media report, that there are checkpoints constructed close to Moscow, the highways close to Moscow, which is actually also not a big deal, because as far as I lived in Moscow for years, I remember that they can like erect checkpoints pretty easy, and I still can remember in 1990s, early 2000s, during this like raised alert of terror attacks staged by FSB or not, you could not normally enter Moscow without your car being checked. So they can erect them pretty easily. I will try to open now Kommersant newspaper. It's Russian newspaper which plays as if it is independent and oriented on intellectual audience. Of course, it is not independent, but it is interesting what they publish. Yeah, like the Moscow Stock Exchange dropped by 2.8% after Prigozhin's statement. General Surovikin called Wagner to return to their camps. Yeah, that is interesting. The official Russian state-owned news agency TASS says that on high alert in Moscow, the riot police units and anti-terror police units. FSB urged the Wagnerites to arrest their head Prigozhin. Yeah, that is what they write now. I wonder what, for example, the Rossiyskaya Gazeta, the official newspaper of the Russian government, writes. Okay, they are very slow. They have always been very slow. FSB calls, yeah, that is a quote. Anti-terror unit of FSB urges not to follow criminal orders by Prigozhin. Yeah, that is all we have. Okay, so what is here in comments? You say yes, sure, why not? Yes, media, in short, kind of internal conflict. Yeah, so yes, exactly. What user with the name Imperator Somnium writes is totally correct. That is a summary of what have been told. So we have an interesting and unexpected culmination, or like a surge of aggressive level of rhetorics between Prigozhin, who is the financier behind the Wagner Group, and Minister of Defense, impersonated in the Minister of Defense Sergey Shoigu. And Prigozhin claimed since months that Minister of Defense doesn't supply his Wagner private military company, which of course is not a private military company, but army-controlled unit. But he said that Ministry of Defense doesn't supply Wagner with enough ammunition, and that is a deliberate way not to let Wagner to gain as much territories of Ukraine as Wagner could have conquered. So this was practically a standard aggression level between Ministry of Defense and Wagner, until last week. Ministry of Defense demanded from all Wagner soldiers to sign their contracts with the Russian army. That was actually a change into the whole situation, because before that, the Russian Ministry of Defense enjoyed the fact that Wagner Group was officially not a part of the Russian army. They were under effective control of the Russian army, but they were not Russian soldiers officially. So that is why they could be used, for example, abroad for years without Russia being like officially accused of participation in some conflict. But important now in this war, the Wagner soldiers were not subject of all compensations for being wounded, for being killed. They didn't get like enough. They didn't get the same salary. They didn't get the same compensations for vacation, etc. Which was not always bad for them, because initially when Wagner was some sort of elite heavy infantry, and they always presented themselves as an elite heavy infantry before they started to suffer losses and had to conscript inmates from the prisons. But before that, it was one of their slogans, like you can enjoy war without all the bureaucratic shit you have to experience in the army. And thinking about the fact that before this full-scale invasion and before the Wagner Group started to conscript inmates from the prisons, they mostly hired only former soldiers of Russian elite units, like of airborne troops, of GRU Spetsnaz, of Marine, etc. So it was really hard to get into the Wagner Group, and the first visible advertising of Wagner with the clear calls, like a call number, phone number, or web pages, appeared only during the summer last year, if I'm not mistaken. I remember the time when the Russian web forums and chat groups were full with inquiries like, guys, do you know address of Wagner? I want to be Wagner. Do you know a phone call? Where should I come? Where should I go? I want to go there. And it was really hard to find a recruiter from Wagner, because they preserved this image of an elite secret group. And then like they went like from from Harrods shop into the Aldi league, like from the first class into discounter airplane. And now, like Prigozhin said against Shoigu, that Shoigu is not ready to supply him with ammunition and with all the things. And that's why Wagner suffers losses. And that is because the jealous approach of Shoigu, who doesn't want Wagner to win. So since yesterday, we have a crazy surge of this hostility between Wagner and Shoigu. 2 days ago, Prigozhin posted a video accusing Russian military and political leadership of totally faking the reasons of attacking Ukraine in February last year, saying that there was no plans of Ukraine to attack, that there were no shelling of Donbass, there were no genocide, no nothing. And the only reason behind the Russian aggression was only that the Russians wanted to occupy Ukraine and to divide Ukraine between Putin-friendly oligarchs, to rob Ukraine, to plunder Ukraine. And that was an interesting change of rhetorics, because Prigozhin never accused Russian leadership in, let me say, international crimes. He always accused them of being lazy, stupid, illoyal, greedy, not helpful, but never questioned the Russian foreign policy. And in this case, he did. And that was 2 days ago. And yesterday, Prigozhin posted all these videos saying that the Wagner military camp was attacked by the Russian artillery, people were killed, and this is the next step into this long story of killing Russians. He clearly meant that the Russian Ministry of Defense sends the Russian soldiers to death. And he said, we are now go to restore justice, and we will put to justice the military leadership of our country. So he didn't say we go to Moscow, but it was clear that they go to Moscow because the military leadership is in Moscow. And those Russian soldiers who will try to stop us will die. And the Russian and the Wagner Telegram channel started to spread these messages saying literally they are starting a cleansing crusade, and those Russian soldiers who join it are welcome, and who will not join it will die. So it was a pretty clear announcement of a conflict. We also saw military equipment, heavy military equipment, and helicopters on the streets and over the streets of Rostov on Don, the Russian headquarters, practically for the military operations in Ukraine. We saw that Lukashenko's private jet, allegedly with his family on board, left Minsk this night. We saw the announcements by FSB and by Putin's press secretary Peskov accusing Prigozhin of mutiny. FSB opened a criminal investigation against Prigozhin. Checkpoints were erected around Moscow and on the highway from Rostov to Moscow, etc., etc. So it was a lot of movement, too many movement, for the case that as if it were just a psyops. And now I started to repeat myself. I did it only for those who joined our live with some sort of delay, like not from the first time. Okay, now I start to read the questions, because you have published, you have posted some of them. I wish more popcorn. Yes, me too. Is Prigozhin smart enough to organize something like this? It seems like this is way above his level. Well, we don't know anything about how much intellectual level one needs to organize something like that. And I would not say that intellectual level, that you need to be like some sort of philosopher, of natural scientist, or literature genius to be an effective manipulator. Prigozhin has clearly demonstrated his ability to climb to the top. He's a convicted criminal. He spent years in Soviet jail. If I'm not mistaken, for organizing of prostitution circle of minors. If I'm not mistaken, he organized, he pulled like minor girls into prostitution. And after his release, like he started several businesses, and then he developed into a very successful businessman, who clearly used all sort of affiliation with the political power to get contracts for his business. Like he started his Concord food company, catering company, and this Concord catering company got contracts. Okay, first, like he organized catering for Vladimir Putin in Petersburg. That's how they got connected. And he obviously found some ways to the heart of Vladimir Putin. And we know that Vladimir Putin had a weak spot for people who served him. Like Vladimir Putin's personal masseur, his sport club got turned into one of the most prominent and rich Russian oligarchs. Vladimir Putin's trainer for like martial arts turned to another very important oligarch. So it wasn't a surprise that Vladimir Putin's cook turned into an important person in Russia. But then Prigozhin, and we have also this photo when Vladimir Putin is receiving George W. Bush in, I think, in Petersburg, and they are sitting in front of the table and enjoying the dinner. And behind George W. Bush, Yevgeny Prigozhin is staying, because he organized the catering and he was controlling if everything is correct. So he always was very close to people he fed with his food. Then Yevgeny Prigozhin organized his cheap catering company, Concord, which got all the contracts for food in military canteens and in school canteens. And if you imagine Russia with a population of 140 million people and a lot of schools, if all the schools get contracts through a company, you can be a really rich man. And there were a lot of scandals with like salmonella in the school food and other toxins and intoxication of school children, etc. But Prigozhin was always okay. He was always fine. And then the Wagner Group got connected with Prigozhin. Yeah, but before Prigozhin also get contract for organizing of troll factories. And the first Russian troll factories belonged to Prigozhin. And then he got connected with the private military company Wagner. And here I'm not sure what happened first. His connection to Dmitry Utkin, the first commander of Wagner Group, or the creation of Wagner Group by Dmitry Utkin. Because if you look on Wagner, Wagner was not Prigozhin from the very beginning. Wagner was Utkin. Wagner got its name because of Utkin's call sign. Because Dmitry Utkin is a hardcore neo-Nazi. He's famous for like having his tattoos here on his collarbones in form of the SS insignia, and like an SS officer with the Z runes. And Wagner was his call sign during his time as a mercenary, I think in Transnistria and maybe on the Balkans, I'm not sure. And he selected Wagner as a call sign because he believed that Wagner is a very cool Nazi nickname because Wagner was a favorite companist of Adolf Hitler. So the Wagner Group, so first it was his call sign, then it was a call sign of his platoon. And out of this call sign, the Wagner Group appeared. And I think that Prigozhin was just asked, as it often happened in Kremlin, to finance it. Like when you're a person who gets his money out of state-funded contracts, and one day people from the state come to you and say, look, you're a rich person, but you need to fund these guys. They're good guys and they need funding, so you will not be poor if you spend like some $1 million, which you have a lot for these guys. So that is how he got into connection with the Wagner Group. And now like he tries to play as if he is a Wagner Group, but he's not. He was just a money bag who funded it. And now back to a question, if he's smart enough. I think a person who has survived so long in Russia, balancing on the top of power and playing with all the connections, he's pretty smart to do something like that. The question is if he's lucky enough, if he has enough resources to be a winner of this game. I'm not sure, I don't know. But I think he's smart enough to organize something like that, especially if he has some allies. We remember that he tried to create an alliance with Ramzan Kadyrov last summer, when they always appeared together and they attacked Surovikin together, claiming that Surovikin is incapable. And the Ramzan unit, Ahmad, and Prigozhin's Wagner Group are the only capable fighters in this war. But then they had a conflict with Kadyrov, and Kadyrov is not his friend anymore. But anyway, like he tried to find a way to get allies in this conflict for a pretty long time. How do you think the Ukraine military should act during this internal Russian conflict? Oh well, I think the Ukrainians are really smart. Like their GUR, their head department of military intelligence, they are amazing people. They know their business. And I think they will support both sides, enjoying the fighting, or at least like starting like some psyop operations, spreading rumors, etc. They will use, if there is something real behind this alleged mutiny, the Ukrainian GUR will use it for 100%. What I personally need to ask myself, if it is not what GUR itself has organized. Because as I said in the beginning, if we accept the idea, the hypothesis that Prigozhin is looking for his exit strategy, as for example, as a crown witness in The Hague, He needs to address somebody abroad. And the Ukrainian military intelligence can be one of the addresses. He can try to speak to and say, "Look, I can do that and that for you, and I can give that and that confessions, and I can attack that and that things." And what is interesting is that this alleged mutiny is timely coordinated with the Ukrainian counteroffensive. Because look, who is the main winner from the situation when the Russians have, if it is a mutiny, when the Russians have a mutiny in the territory between Rostov and Moscow, when the Ukrainian army has checked and tested the Russian defensive lines for the whole front line since 3 weeks, and now is obviously preparing to unleash the main power of the fresh brigades. It is the Ukrainian military. It is the Ukrainian military, because the Russians look. Just think what is the third of a Russian military commander who is, for example, guarding the airspace over Ryazan, or over Brand, or over I don't know, like over Belgorod, Kursk, Voronezh, you name them. Who is the boss? Should I secure my perimeter? What happens if I see a plane? Because the Wagnerites clearly said that they will destroy any military unit trying to stop them, including aircrafts. Like, should I shoot the aircraft because Wagnerites have their own aircrafts which are flying around? What should I do? They have the same friend of four call signs. They have the same equipment. They speak the same language. What should I do? Should I protect the airspace from whom? Should I wait an order from Moscow? Should I barricade? Should I use this planned fortress, not letting my soldiers go out, not letting anyone get in? And if in the same moment the Ukrainians attack, I'm afraid that this commander will be a bit overloaded with incoming information. Like, he's calling Moscow, asking who is the boss, who is in charge. He sees some military movement in front of his gate. He sees something is incoming. What should he do? I think it's a big challenge for the Russian army. And I think the Ukrainians will, even if it's not organized by the Ukrainians will know how to use it. They are amazing. Their military intelligence is amazing. The truth is, before, do you think Zelensky's announcement on the Zaporizhia power plant being mined by Russia has any relations to the timing of this event? Schönen Grüße nach Deutschland. Oh, danke. I don't think so. I don't think that the announcement by Zelensky with the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, the biggest nuclear power plant in Europe, which is being mined by Russians since several months, that it has time coordination with this Prigozhin alleged mutiny. Why I don't think so? Because we knew since not weeks but months that the Russians are doing that with the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, and we know that they brought equipment, they brought artillery, they brought ammunition, they brought explosives. We know that they are diverse. They most probably have mined the closing gates of the water reservoir. We have seen the statement by the general who is the commander of the Russian ABC troops, like atomic, biological, chemical defense troops, who is in charge for Zaporizhia power plant now, who said that Zaporizhia power plant will be either Russian or there will be scorched earth here. And addressing his soldiers, he said, if we get this order to destroy this power plant, we need to honorably execute this order. So it's not a surprise, it's not a secret that the Russians were planning to destroy the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant in a case when they believed they could bring them military advantage, or at least help them to make some act of revenge. So Zelensky just like made a statement in the situation where there was a culmination of this mining, because we got the information that the Russians have mined the cooling system of the reactors. And but it is, of course, it is all timely connected with the counteroffensive. That is clear, because the Russians, if they or when they will try to blow up the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, it will be connected with the Ukrainian counteroffensive, because the Russians will try to punish the Ukrainians or to stop the Ukrainians, and they will know that otherwise they will not be able to maintain control over the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. So they will pull out, but before they pull out, they will try to blow it up. And Wagner Group is unhappy with their position because of the Ukrainian counteroffensive. And the Russian Minister of Defense Shoigu has his bad image because of the Ukrainian counteroffensive. And Vladimir Putin is looking silly, telling his stories about like 200 destroyed Leopard tanks because of the Ukrainian counteroffensive. So of course it's timely connected. It's not like events which just like randomly appear. But I don't believe that Zelensky somehow thought during his announcement of this alleged mutiny, even if this alleged mutiny was organized by the Ukrainian military intelligence, who maybe, I don't exclude this as an option, maybe they had some influence on Prigozhin and his actions. The truth is, we don't know how much of the actual military and actual Russians support Prigozhin. We know it's not a small number. He combines the peaceful part and the ultra-national. Yes, of course, we don't know. But as I said, there are statements by Prigozhin who clearly resonates with the way of how the Russian military personnel sees the world. And he clearly is a more like popular tribune compared to Shoigu or to Putin. And that is what his image, that is how he constructed his image, a strong guy who fights on the front line, who understands the needs, the simple needs of his men, and he's ready to support his men, and he's brutal and cruel, but fair. That is like his image, like he's playing Stalin, actually, like this mythological Stalin, a brutal leader who is striving for victory, and like who is who knows no mercy, but who who understands and respects good specialists and experts and good soldiers. A totally mythological image, but resonates in the hearts of many Russians. Thank you for this excellent stream. Thank you for listening to it and asking great questions and being here in this late hour. You did not perceive the emotion in the voice of the Russian figures announcing the news. Did it sound panicked or unusual? Well, I have not seen it, unfortunately, because I just read it, because I'm in Berlin now, and I don't have VPN, and the video is blocked here. I will try to open it if you allow me. Just a moment. Первый канал, экстренный выпуск. Okay. I'm afraid on YouTube I will not be able to find it. And if someone has the link to this, for example, to this breaking news story of the first channel, please send it in the comments. What I can say, what I watched this video announcement by Surovikin, and Surovikin looked totally stressed. Like his pose, how he said, how he spoke, he looked totally stressed. Like I know there will be like a lot of jokes that he was drunk. I don't believe he was. Like his speech was not clear, and he clearly struggled with his own tongue, but he was not drunk. He was totally stressed, and he did like he was in a situation which was not natural for him, I would say. The same I can say about the body language of General Alexeyev, deputy head of General Chief of Staff. Like they both looked uncomfortably. Nice people in the chart. Public performance in Bulgaria. Yeah, I'm remembering August 1991 coup attempt when the low ranks of the Red Army switched sides. Is it probable that this will happen again and lower rank officers will turn their allegiance to Prigozhin? Well, that is an interesting question, because the whole story behind the Soviet army was a story how the political leadership tried to deprive the army of any intellectual and political capacities. It started in the Great Purge by Stalin in 1937, when most of the generals of the Red Army back then were killed. And after that, there was like a small renaissance of the influence of the army after the World War II, as the army was victorious against the German Nazis. But we remember how it ended. The face of the Soviet victory against the German Nazis, Marshal Georgy Zhukov, was degraded and sent to a provincial position of Odessa military district, not even the Moscow military district. And Zhukov was actually a person who arrested Beria. Actually, I recommend to everyone watch the Antonucci. Antonucci, yeah. It's too late for me. The film Death of Stalin. Death of Stalin is being shot as a dark comedy. Effectively, it is not. As a Russian-born person who was socialized in Russia, I say it is a very sad reality. Like what you will perceive as a dark comedy, as sarcasm, is really how the bureaucrats think. It is just like a bit like sharpened in this movie, but it is an amazing film who describes like how the Soviet bureaucracy and the Russian bureaucracy thinks. But back to Zhukov. Like Zhukov was the person who, despite all of his brutality and stupid attacks and his demeaning practices with sending infantry battalions against minefield, he won for the Soviets this war on the military field with all the American weapons and American gasoline and canned meat, etc., but commanding the Soviet army. And he was degraded after the war. And the same happened to Marshal Rokossovsky, Konstantin Rokossovsky, who was also a very popular marshal among the Soviet army, and he was sent to Poland as a defense minister. So the Soviet army after World War II was degraded, and with one goal, to deprive it of political influence. And then the generation of Soviet officers were raised in like a politically castrated version. Their education was terrible, nothing compared to West Point, nothing with like humanitarian sciences or technical sciences, really nothing. They were raised deliberately as drunkards, people who cannot say several words. You will not find any Russian officer who is able to hold a speech which one could listen, or I don't say like about like being able to talk with any educated person and hold this educated person's attention. And it was done deliberately to make army weak. That is why there was no like rebellion in the army when the Soviet Union collapsed. like the attempt to take control over the Soviet Union by this GKChP, this group of conspirators. It was a political approach by political leaders of the country, by these old communists, but not by the army. And as soon as this political conspiracy was defeated, the army just did what they were told to. They just stayed in the barracks. There was no attempt to organize some sort of political coup. There were like two generals in later years already under Yeltsin, Alexander Lebed and Rokhlin. How was his first name? I would not say, because I will be mistaken. Maybe Mikhail Rokhlin, but I'm not sure. Who demonstrated their political aspirations, and they were pretty popular. And both died. Like Rokhlin was allegedly killed in while he was sleeping by his wife, which was very strange, like from the pistol. And Alexander Lebed crashed in a helicopter during his tour over Krasnoyarsky region. The third general who demonstrated political aspirations but was extremely stupid, General Makashov. He didn't die, maybe because he was so stupid that he didn't pose any threat. So from this perspective, the army is deprived of any political subjectivity and political power. Even like the unions of officers, like Союз офицеров России, the union of Russian officers, they are really clown organizations who nobody respects, even in the army. So from this perspective, I would not say that there is like a big problem for the Russian political leadership, that the army will try to revolt. And that is why Prigozhin is so important from my perspective, because Prigozhin is not a military person. He is a businessman, and he has his political aspirations, and he knows how to sign deals and how to create networks of influence. And his Wagner Group is also not it is not like constructed out of only military personnel. They have people who have like other experiences. I think it is important to understand what kind of different like military political organization we have here. And I would even say that Prigozhin clearly oriented on the experience and the model of Iranian guardians of Islamic Revolution, this corps of the Guardian of Islamic Revolution. Because we know in Iran, these guardians of Islamic Revolution, they are not only a parallel military organization, a parallel army. They run a lot of businesses. They are actually an economic conglomerate of oil industry, gas industry, high-tech industry, etc. They control a lot of profitable industries in Iran. And that is what Prigozhin tried to do with Wagner. He opened his Wagner business center, not just because he wanted to have like some sort of shiny glass skyscraper in Petersburg, but because he wanted to control profitable high-tech industries. He wanted to produce drones in Russia. He wanted to control IT industry. He organized hackathons among school children. Like that is really like that sounds creepy. Like the Wagner Group, which is famous for killing prisoners of war by smashing their heads with a sledgehammer, and who are happy to demonstrate it, because that's why like they presented to their friends and to their enemies the sledgehammers as a sign of their brutality. And this terrorist group, this group which brags with the slogan like we are killers, like we are torturers, we are henchmen. They organized IT programming hackathons for school children, giving the school children of St. Petersburg like some certificates of excellence. and they gave to these students, high school students, challenges like you need to program artificial intelligence program for a drone, like how can drone attack the enemy. So they try to find the ways how to get the youth on their side, how to get access to prospective technologies and prospective industries, and how to get like money, how to win orders from the state and get money from the state, not only for fighting but also for producing of the weapons. That was actually very clever, and I think that he clearly copied the Iranian model. So here I think like is his difference between him and the officers who were mostly heavy drunkards and uneducated people. Reports that Prigozhin has released another message as his troops were entering Rostov-on-Don. If everyone gets in the way, we'll destroy everyone. We move on and yes, that is even if it is a message which I have not seen yet because this live is already lasting for more than 1/2 an hour. This wording was in the Telegram publics of Wagner Group, like we will enter the cities, and if you join us, you join us, and if you try to stop us, you will be destroyed. But let me read the news now. Okay, so more checkpoints around Rostov-on-Don. Okay. There are still civilians on the streets of Rostov-on-Don. It looks like pretty calm. The same, like Putin got informed. In Rostov region, the highway M4 is totally closed. Okay, what do Ukrainian media write? Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that now, like on 1 hour 53 minutes in the night Berlin time and 2 hour 53 minutes Moscow time, we are coming close to the end of the new information. I'm currently reading Ukrainian news agencies. That is interesting. They say that dozens, I quote, dozens of aircrafts. It is not clear if it is airplanes or helicopters arrived to Rostov, bringing special units like anti-terror units. The Moscow Times, it is a English-speaking Russian newspaper being published in Moscow, says that one can clearly hear a lot of helicopters over Moscow, which is also a pretty normal situation. In Rostov, police officers get heavy weapons, which like sounds like a standard situation when they are afraid of something. Yes, Prigozhin published a statement. I think that is what you meant in your comment. Prigozhin published a statement urging the soldiers of the Russian Interior Ministry, Rosgvardia, to join his units. And what do we see here? Yes, that is the quote by Prigozhin. The most perspective politician, he means himself, the most perspective politician in Russia calls the Rosgvardia, that is the military unit under control of Russian Interior Ministry, with a proposition which you better do not reject. In a case you follow the criminal orders and try to prevent the planned approach of justice, this will end for the employees which made a wrong choice very bad. Well, that is a typical stylistic of Prigozhin. Like, he uses this pseudo quasi high style. That is very interesting because, like, he tries to sound very refined, tries to sound like a highly educated person who he is not, and he's using the words which normally people don't use in normal language, or in normal conversation, or syntactic constructions which a person normally never use. For example, just listen to this. The most prospective politician calls the Rosgvardia with his offer, which one better does not reject. That is not like how you address people, right? But that is like how he speaks. This is pretty authentic for Prigozhin. And what we see now more, the Russian police and Russian army got permission to open fire against anyone who will try to attack them, which is actually like a confirmation of the Russian legislation. The Russian police may open fire without asking questions if they feel threatened. But it is important that this has been announced separately. Okay, so now we approach, I think, to the end of the news. I will try to answer the questions which I have not answered yet. Prigozhin channel, but weirdly disabled comments. Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, that is very typical. These Telegram channels normally disable questions or comments when something goes wrong or dangerous. Ukraine knew Russia is weaker, and they could probably negotiate Crimea back with some political instability. But what if this was planned to get Ukraine to negotiate citizenship with Russia? I don't believe that Ukraine will try to negotiate. Like, if first, like, there is nothing to negotiate actually. From the Ukrainian perspective, there is nothing to negotiate about Crimea. The Ukrainian position is that Ukraine is strong enough to sooner or later liberate Crimea by military means, or when the Russian army just leaves Crimea, because the Russians will see that Crimea is undefendable. So from this perspective, the weaker Russia is not a call for Ukrainians to start negotiations, but just an invitation to increase the pressure. Because, like, if you look at the map of southern Ukraine and Crimea, you will see that Crimea cannot be supplied through this land corridor now, because the railways and the roads which lead from, like, Rostov via Mariupol and then Melitopol, Tokmak to Chongar, where the bridge has been destroyed recently or damaged, they're not free. They now go through the military contested areas. So you cannot bring, like, the idea of the Russians was to get this land corridor to Crimea, but a controlled, safe corridor, maybe to build new road there. But until recently, you could go to there only through, like, Zaporizhia. Zaporizhia has never been under Russian control. So there were, of course, like, some smaller roads which could be used, but Crimea has never been supplied through this land corridor. Crimea has always been supplied through the Crimea Bridge, the carriage bridge. And the carriage bridge remains the only way to Crimea. And in a case when the Ukrainian army improves their position in the southern regions of Ukraine, the left bank of Dnipro and Kherson River and the south of the Zaporizhia region, then the Ukrainian missiles will be able to hit anything around the Crimea Bridge and on the Crimea Bridge, even by using HIMARS alone. Not speaking about Storm Shadow missiles or Taurus missiles, which I believe Germany will soon provide to Ukraine. So as soon as the Ukrainian army appears in Tokmak or in Berdyansk, which is like much better, like on the shore of the Sea of Azov, Crimea will not be defendable anymore. The Russians will not be able to hold Crimea anymore. It's impossible. Like the White Army was not able to hold Crimea in 1920-21. Russians will not be able to hold Crimea because of the supply. You don't have supply line, and this moment will be when the Russians will stay in front of the choice: if they voluntarily leave Crimea, like they left the Snake Island, or they stay in Crimea and get either killed or captured. So from the Ukrainian perspective, there is no need to negotiate with Russia about Crimea. There can be a way to negotiate with the Russians about like their gesture of goodwill, like, look, guys, you will be killed anyway, so it's better for you to pull back, and your lives will be saved, and our lives will be saved, and it will be smooth. So this is what I can imagine, but it's not like a negotiation like you give us Crimea back and we give you that back. It is just we offer you your life when you disappear. And that is what I would not call like a negotiation in the sort of like political roundtable, Minsk III, Normandy format or something like that. Hello, Sergey. Nice to see you on YouTube. Hello. Yeah. Hi, Bartolomeu. It's also nice to see you here. Chest. Thanks for this very interesting, informative live stream. Thank you for being here. A question from Bartolomeu. I have one important question. Have you seen any Wagner convoy? No, I have not. No, I have not. And that is actually very interesting because if they really want to move to Moscow, they need to move in column. And the way, like from Rostov to Moscow, it is how many, like 2,000 kilometers? It is not the way like you do pretty fast. And that is why I think that this all like things with the checkpoints around Moscow, they can be explained either by paranoia or by the fact that there can be something more than Wagner. And that is what the idea with which I started this live stream, that I can imagine, like, I don't say that it is true because, as I said, I don't have all the puzzle pieces of information, and all my speculations are totally like speculative character. I'm sorry for this pleonasm. But if Prigozhin statements are just a camouflage for a bigger coup or for a bigger mutiny, insurgency, you name it, then it explains why Alexander Lukashenko moved suddenly in the midnight from Minsk to Moscow, why there are like checkpoints around Moscow, why there is so much reaction. Because I repeat once again, Wagner Group is a group which can be drained by the Ministry of Defense by just stopping supplying them with ammunition, fuel, and other equipment and military goods. And you don't, even if you have like 25,000 of some soldiers which fight somewhere like in the war, but who don't have a chance, like to go to another place to fight with their weapons, because the Russian Ministry of Defense can crush them just by the usage of brutal force, by air force, by artillery, by anything. You don't start this panic. You don't start this theater. And this theater can be explained either by the fact that this mutiny is staged to achieve some other goals, but I don't think that you stage such a huge mutiny, because if you overreact of a stage mutiny, you demonstrate your weakness, and you don't want to demonstrate your weakness. Or you can explain it by the idea that, or by the explanation that Prigozhin is not alone, and Prigozhin is just the face of some more massive movement, of some coup, in which other people are involved, from the Ministry of Defense, from FSB, from GRU, or from other institutions, and this makes the whole story plausible. That is why there are like that much movement. That is why there are statements by Surovikin, by Alexeyev, by the first channel of Russian TV, by the second channel of Russian TV. That's why they make the whole story, because they understand that it is more than just Putin's coup who went wrong. And you don't need a convoy, like you don't need a convoy from Rostov to Moscow in this case, because it's not about Wagner only. It is maybe, I don't know, it is maybe Tamanskaya division, or maybe someone from Alabin or from Salatino close to Moscow, or maybe it's like the 27th Sevastopol Brigade from Mosringen, which is like based directly on the MKAT, on the Moscow city ring. I don't know. Like, if there are other actors in this game, then it explains the level of panic. But we will see it soon. Like, what we are doing now, like, is pure speculation. It's more like mind games. We can show the scene. We need to know what exactly is happening. Exactly. Because like what we know now, we like it is night. Like we will definitely have more information in the morning, because like there will be development. There will be like shifts on the chessboard. Civilians will awake and will make footages. Will post like photos and videos on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and we can geolocate them. So now, like, we just like stating, okay, that is what happened, that is what can happen further, and the next step, we need more information. I hope this is real, but where is the proof that the alleged Wagner column exists at all? So far, all we have are Prigozhin audio and the theater of Russian panic. Any photos? No, you're right. No, but as I told you, or sorry, like it was like pretty rude what I said. Like I didn't want to say like, look, I told you, but once again, like, why haven't you? I know, of course, it was not that. I'm sorry. As we can imagine that if this situation does not involve only Wagner, then you don't need the Wagner column. And like what makes me suspicious is the level of overreaction of the Russian authorities, because until now, like Prigozhin expressed himself in a pretty rude way. Like he called Putin an old crazy granddad, grandpa, old crazy grandpa. He called Shoigu with all possible bad words. He threatened to come to Moscow and to bring the bureaucrats in Ministry of Defense to justice. It's not his first time when he says he will bring them to justice. He said it also a couple of months ago. He also rejected to sign contracts for Wagner Group soldiers with Ministry of Defense until he unexpectedly, suddenly last week appeared at Ministry of Defense. And obviously, he had signed these documents that Wagner Group soldiers are now the soldiers of the Russian army officially. So, and until now, there were no statements by the Kremlin. Like, all we knew is that, like, Peskov said something like, like, Prigozhin is a strange person, but I would not, like, take, everything what he says so seriously. So they try to downplay the story, and now they like push it. Like once again, if you have General Surovikin addressing the second TV channel of Russia, controlled by Kremlin, owned by the state, addressing the Wagnerites, holding a machine gun like an assault rifle in his hand, and struggling with his nervous way of holding the speech. This, you don't do this when you have like some non-existent Wagner column somewhere in the south of your country. So that is why I think there is something more, but you're absolutely correct. We don't know what is there. So I suggest we go like the last round through the news, and then we probably stop this live. I hope you enjoyed it. I totally enjoyed it, and it is my first live, and I'm sorry if it was clumsy, but the situation is also. Oh, that is interesting. Prigozhin said that his troops are approaching Rostov, and that Russian Air Force received orders to destroy the column. That is interesting because, like, he's saying that he has that column, but we don't have any photo or video. What can be theoretically can be explained that the Wagnerites themselves, they are interested not to post their locations, and as it is already 3 a.m. in Russia, I can imagine that there are not so much civilians on the streets who would risk to video record it. But anyway, we will see what happens. We know that in Rostov we have, and that is what is proved, what is fact, that there are a lot of IVs on the streets of Rostov, helicopters flying over the city, and there are information that police gets like assault rifles and everything, which can be precaution but can be not. So anyway, I have totally enjoyed the stream. Thank you so much for having endured this clumsy stream for 2 hours. Thank you so much. It's a great honor for me. And tomorrow it will be interesting. Tomorrow will be we will get, I believe, answers to many of our questions. I'm pretty sure that a lot of my ideas will be proven as false, just because the new facts will arrive, and that is why I stress that what I told you today is just speculations, and please don't take them as like some expert analysis or something. For expert analysis, you need much more information, and that is like clear speculations and some like rumors and histories, like the name of Shoigu or like how Wagner was founded. And yes, we will see. We definitely see each other again. Here I see the comment by Kathy Kadan. I hope I have pronounced your surname correctly. Thank you. Will you do again? I will definitely do. Thank you. I will definitely do. And I hope, but of course, like you need like some development. You cannot do it just because you want to appear on YouTube. I will definitely do it with my pleasure as soon as we have more information. And thank you once again. Have a great night. Those who are like in the US, especially on the West Coast, have a good evening. And those who are in the East, good morning next day. And we'll know tomorrow more. I hope that this will be interesting and good for the Ukrainian victory. Thank you so much, and thank you for being here. Have a great day.